Being single is hard, but you don't have to survive it. Like, it's not a case of surviving being single. Single offers you such a rare opportunity to be like, hold on a second, this is a season of my life where only I get to make decisions. One vote. Should I do this? Yes. I think it does take somebody like me to sit down and be like, you know, this is your life, don't you? And you don't have to tell anybody what you're doing. Because when you start thinking like, how much freedom did I have? It completely changes your mindset around being single. I want to look back in 10 years' time and be able to think, God, my single chapter shaped every part of the life that I live now. I can't wait for that day. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. I feel like my podcast name is very fitting at the moment in the UK, like Coming Up for Air. We are experiencing a huge heat wave and recording in 33 degrees it's going to be today. It's actually 27 at the minute. Is interesting when I don't want background noise from the outside. I've just had to shut some of my house is near a school, and I can hear all the kids yelling going to school. I don't know whether the schools have made the kids come in earlier, I'm not sure, but I could hear the kids yelling, and I thought, this thing, my microphone, is definitely going to pick that up, and that can't be a thing. So yeah, we're experiencing a heat wave at the moment. If I go a little bit shiny, it's because I am actually really, really warm. I have actually got a very basic handheld fan that I will probably be pausing throughout the episode just to, cool myself down, and then we go again. I've got a big glass of water as well, and I'm actually recording at 7 o'clock in the morning because I'm trying to beat the heat. I'm having a lovely time in the heat. I'm one of those people that really loves it, and I get annoyed when people complain about it, but I understand people's frustrations. The UK isn't built for this heat, but I think we moan about it being grey and raining all year. And then the minute that the sun's like, okay, let's just remind you that we aren't a hot country and that we can't cope. But when the sun comes out, people complain. And I went for a run, when was it? Tuesday? It was really hot. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But what I forget is that I come back to a normal house with one fan and some iced water, and that's it. Whereas like when I'm running abroad, I go back to an air-conditioned apartment, which they are two different things. Like coming back from a run and being able to get into a cold apartment is amazing. Coming back from a run in the UK when it is like 1 million degrees outside doesn't really have the same effect. And I know people have been getting up and running really early, but to be fair, like I said, it's 7:30 and it's in the 20s already. I feel sorry for the kids that have got to go to school. Don't know if their classrooms are air conditioned. I don't remember my classrooms being air conditioned, but I figured if I sit really still, then I won't get really, really hot. So fingers crossed that's going to work. So we're having a heat wave in the UK at the moment, and we're also playing in the World Cup. So the summer vibes are summer vibing, if you ask me, except the football's on so late. I was talking to my best friend yesterday, and we're watching England on Saturday. It doesn't start till 10 o'clock. Kick-off's at 10 o'clock. I said, what are we going to do in that time? So we've had to kind of like strategically plan our evening so we don't get to 10 o'clock and have kind of like maxed out on the evening and want to go home in the next hour. We're having to plan it quite well so we can actually stay out and watch the football match. Because it's really funny because I don't know whether I said this on my hour-long episode or on my Patreon, but the World Cup was on 4 years ago, and it was in the winter, and it was the first winter that I was single. And I remember watching it with all of my new friends, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, the next time we do that will be in 4 years. 4 years has come round, and now I sit and I think this could potentially be the last World Cup that I'm single. I don't have any responsibilities in terms of like being in a relationship. My life could look so much different in 4 years. And my friend the other day was like, trust you to make it like around your life. Like the World Cup's on and you've managed to make it about being single, your life, and you're probably going to make it into some form of content. And I was like, yeah, I am. I am going to mention that on my podcast because it's funny. When you do think of it like that, it is 4 whole years till we're going to be playing in the World Cup again. And in those 4 years, so much can change. And I think it's quite exciting. I remember watching the Euros. I was in a relationship with the Euros, and then I remember watching the Euros again, and I was single. I think like, okay, so the next big football tournament that we're going to be looking forward to in 4 years' time or 2 years' time with the Euros, my life could look completely different. And I think that's when I know that like I'm excited for my future and that I'm like looking forward to the future and what the future's going to bring. My single person content does so well and gets a lot of traction, and I get a lot of like messages saying like, can you do more single content? So I wanted to do an episode today about being single and how to enjoy being single and not just survive it. And I'm not going to give you like generic like just go and sit and wait and heal and get new hobbies and do self-care and all the rest of it. I'm going to try and get into things that you probably haven't thought about when being single and how to like combat them. I think anyway, I do a lot of research online before I sit and do these podcasts, and I listen to what other people are talking about, and I hear what sort of advice people are just bumping into all the time, and I try and make my advice a little bit different. I try and think of things from a different perspective, outside the box. Like I said, I do a lot of research. I'm on Reddit a lot, and I try and see what people are researching and see what people are asking, see what people are suffering with, basically. See if I can help and put content together around that. But I just wanted to say, if you are listening to this and you're not quite there yet, that's fine. These episodes aren't going anywhere. You can revisit these episodes when you feel like you are more ready to think about being single. You can get so much healing content and emotional conversations over on my Patreon. It's £5 a month, which is less than a coffee, I believe. The coffee that you're probably going to just nip to and get on your lunch break. You can be getting 2 additional episodes a week from me. I did two episodes last week actually, just basically like chats, updating everybody on what's going on in my life, some struggles that I've been through in the last couple of weeks and how I've combated that and how I've moved forward from that. And sometimes they're like really advice heavy, sometimes the chats are like really emotional, and I've already had a lot of comments from people that do follow me and subscribe to my Patreon over there, just about how having somebody be vulnerable online is helping them. And I think that then empowers me to continue to do what I do, because I then know that actually speaking emotively around certain topics and being honest and being open and saying, do you know what? I had a really rubbish day the other day and I got really upset, but this is how I came out of it. It's kind of that sort of content over there. So if you do want to sign yourself up, it's £5 a month. You can follow the links in all my bios. You can go to my Instagram, go on the link in my bio, follow it through to my Stan store, and then that will take you to my Patreon. Also, whilst I'm on this hype, I have now finally set up my automated email system. Now, this has taken 3 solid days. It's been in the making for about a month. It has been in my head. It is something that I've needed to do to then do the next thing that I want to do. But my God, being self-taught is so hard. Like, so hard when it comes to stuff like that. I have jumped around 4 different platforms to find the best one. Got so far with one platform and thought, it's not going to work. That's not what I want it to do. It's not going to be able to deliver what I want it to deliver. Jumped to another platform. I've already got my Stan store, so I didn't want to jump too far away from that. I wanted like a plug-in to go in with that. It has been chaotic. But my emails are going to go out every Monday, every Friday. They're going to be a email on a Monday to get you through the week, and it's going to be an email on a Friday to get you through the weekend, because I feel like if I could have signed up to a subscription service that sent me emails or sent me texts into my inbox, then I would have got through the week a lot easier, or if I had something to refer back to. And I'm constantly trying to think of ways to make my content accessible. Sometimes people don't want to sit and listen to an hour-long podcast episode. Sometimes people don't want to sign up to my Patreon, which is fine. The emails are bridging the gap in between. If you want a quick, like, how am I going to get through this week, or how am I going to get through this weekend, I have been there and I know what it feels like to have to face a weekend when you're not feeling great, or having to show up for work on a Monday when you're not feeling great. So fingers crossed this will work. You can, again, sign up to my emails. I'm going to make a whole post on my Instagram highlights on it, so you can click on that. Or if you're listening to this early doors, I haven't had time to make the highlight on my Instagram, then you can go to my link in my Stan store. Again, it will take you through. It's the first banner. Just sign up to the emails. There is a couple of clicks that you need to do. Pop your email in and voila, you will be entered into my email flow. And they'll go out early morning on a Monday and early morning on a Friday, English time. Depending on your time zones, I obviously can't manipulate that. I've tried to manipulate it, but I can't. I can't make it so my American listeners, Australian listeners, all my listeners around the world are going to not get it at like 2 o'clock in the morning. That's what I was trying to prevent. A lot of my followers are English, so it is going to be English time. But if that is something that you want to do as well, and if you're struggling to find any of my links, just message me. It might take me a bit of a while to get back in contact with you, but I will eventually get in contact with you and I will be able to send you the links straight into your inbox. Anyway, let's get on with the episode. So like I said, I'm going to be talking about not just surviving being single. And I think it's really hard to be single because everyone hates it. Sometimes I think I'm the only person that is enjoying it, but everyone around you hates it and everyone makes it like it is such a negative thing. It is really, really, really hard to come to a place where you're actually excited about being single, or actually really enjoy being single, and not being faced with people being like, oh, she's just saying that. She's just saying she's enjoying being single. She actually isn't. And I've got to a point now in my life where I say it and I don't feel like I have to explain it. And I think I've said this before. My mum used to tell me off for over explaining myself. I would say something and then I would back it up. Now I say stuff and I just let the silence settle. So I'm like, oh no, I really love being single. I don't say, because I can do this, because I've got that, because I've managed to achieve this in my life, because I've been able to do that, blah, 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 blah. I enjoy being single. The end. That's the end of the sentence. That's the cue for somebody else to speak. And that sounds funny, but like, you do find yourself having to justify your life when you're single and justify why you're having a good time being single. Because everywhere you look online, being single is spoken about in such a negative way. And I think when you say to people like, oh, I'm single, you then worry that people are going to be like, she can't make a relationship stick, she can't find anyone, she's still cut up about her ex. And all these things are like presumed just because you've decided to stay single. And then on the flip side, if you are happy being single and you don't want people to think that, you then find yourself trying to justify why you are single. And I found myself doing that a lot, and it frustrated me because I was like, hold on a second, this isn't anybody else's life. And just because I'm talking to somebody that might have dreaded being single like I did when I was in a relationship, doesn't mean I then have to be like, well, I've achieved this, I'm going like this, I'm doing this, I'm living like this. My life is so much more better and more enriched and I'm having the best time. I would find myself doing that. And now I don't. I want to talk about some shifts that you can implement into your single chapter of your life that is going to make your life feel enriched and better and expansive, not empty. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to just fan myself and have a quick drink. but we will get into it. Where I'm going to start, like I said, when you become single, you do become like a rabbit in headlights, because especially if you don't know how to be single, like I didn't, and you are so accustomed to a life that looked so much different to the one that you are living now. And I think one of the things that people don't think about when they become single is that they have become so used to having a life that is actually being observed by somebody else. When you're in a relationship, somebody else knows everything about you, where you are, what you're doing, how your day went, what food you're eating, what annoyed you, what TV program you're watching. You are updating somebody, and somebody is updating you on their life every day. That's what it's like being in a relationship. I used to get a morning text, a morning phone call, probably like mid-morning when there was a break, a lunchtime phone call, and then I would get a evening phone call with what time I'm going to be home, what's for dinner, what do you want to do tonight, shall we go out for dinner, blah, 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 all the rest of it. I used to get that every day. And I'd be like, oh, I'm just doing this and I'm just doing that. And then I'm just going to go out and do that. And I think we should have this for dinner. And when my ex left, and I realised that, like I said, when I first started the episode, I was still kind of like showing up like I had an audience. So I was almost like falsifying, if that's a word. But I was always trying to like pretend that I was okay, and I was still trying to show up as the person in the relationship. I was still like dressing like I was the person in the relationship. I still had the same routine as I was in a relationship. And I think this changed when I thought, hold on a second, I'm still living like my ex is still observing my life. I wanted the information to get back to my ex that my life hadn't changed. I hadn't just gone out and started sleeping around because I was single. I was a person that could be in a relationship still. I didn't want to go out and enjoy my life. I wanted to be indoors and be like wife material. And that extended to wanting his friends to also relay information back to him and his family and probably his friends that like I hadn't changed. I was still living in a way that I was, one, in a relationship, but also two, I didn't adjust my life because I wanted my ex back. And I masked a lot, and I was trying to be the ex that was like, he's going to regret to leave. I was doing things that I thought would bring my ex back. I didn't care, seeing if he found out that I was like seen with another boy or all the rest of it, all the stuff that you kind of do that's almost toxic and you want to make your ex jealous. I was doing all of that. And then one day I woke up and I thought, I'm actually not living for myself. And I think the best question to ask yourself at the moment in your single era is, if no one was to hear about your day, nobody, if you didn't perform for anybody today, how would you show up differently? What would you do differently? And I think it was this that made me realise that a huge part of my life, and that was my healing, was still being lived like I had spectators, and these spectators were invisible. People didn't really care about what I was doing, and my ex didn't care about what I was doing. And I think that question changed it for me, because I was thinking, okay, if no one knew what I was doing today, I would have got out a lot more of my emotion, and I would sit and I would cry and I would have difficult conversations with myself. I would show up in a way that was comforting for me. I didn't want to show up all the time like looking immaculate, going to the gym, looking like I had my life together. The minute that I stopped performing and calmed down, sat down and thought, no one's watching my life. I don't have to tell people what I'm doing. And I'm going to do a bit in a segment at the end about social media and showing up online, but I used to think I had to show up online to prove that I was okay. And the minute I took all of that away was the minute that I sat down and thought, you know what, this way is better. And I make jokes about this, but this can be used here. I say that, like, I know, and I said it last week, I'm an unsupervised adult. If I wanted to get drunk in the middle of today on a Thursday, nobody would know. If I stayed in my house, didn't post online about it, got drunk, and then went to bed and woke up the next day and then went and saw my friends, only I know that I'm sat in my house getting drunk. And I mean, I wouldn't do that. That was just an example. But like, if you think about what you're doing and how you're living, you don't have to tell everybody everything of what you're doing. And I think here you need to remind yourself that you are living for invisible spectators. 1000%. Your ex doesn't know what you're doing. Your family doesn't know what you're doing. Your friends don't know what you're doing. Your Instagram followers don't know what you're doing. If you do not, I think a lot of people don't realise that being single kind of starts when you stop narrating your life for somebody else. You are by yourself. And I know that that sounds brutal when you don't want to be by yourself, but you are by yourself. You are your own person. You don't have to justify anything that you do in your life currently right now. Caveat, if you have children, it's slightly different. Obviously, I talk from my experience where I don't have children. And so if you are single and childless and you're listening to this, this is a big fat reminder that you don't have to show up for anybody now. You have nobody to show up for. And that might sound like the most obvious thing. You think, yeah, I know, Lou, I'm really grieving that. And yes, you are really grieving that. But on the flip side, you can do whatever the hell you like. I was looking for flights to Dubai the other day because I thought I could spend a couple of weeks out in Dubai, because I have nobody here saying, oh, well, you need to come back for that. We've got this weekend. We've got that this weekend. You control your own diary. You control your own life. And I think sometimes it does take, when you come out of a long-term relationship, I think it does take somebody like me to sit down and be like, you know, this is your life, don't you? And you don't have to tell anybody what you're doing, and you don't have to check in with anybody, and you don't have to show up for anybody other than yourself today, because you forget, because you have had an observer for so long. And it is so obvious when I talk to people, when they're relaying, like online, and they're relaying their story, and I can see it and I can hear it with what they say. And I say, like, you know, you can show up for just you today. You don't have to prove to anybody that you're doing better, you're doing fine, you know, that you still have the same routine. And I start a lot of my conversations off with routine and talking to people about their routine. I start there, because I don't think people are aware that they're still stuck in a routine that they had with somebody that is no longer in their life anymore. I think it's really interesting when people come to me and they say, like, how on earth are you so secure on being single? I actually remind myself every single day what a luxury it is to be single and to not have anyone depending on me. And I used to hate when people used to say to me, like, there's a big wide world out there. I'm not saying you have to pack your bags and go travelling, but there is a big wide world out there. And you have a time in your life to be able to actually spread your wings without anyone around you saying, I don't like that. Can you not do that? Can we just do this? You've just got to take me into consideration. Like, you have that luxury at the minute. And it might be that you are going through a grieving period and you don't feel like it at the moment. But that is why I always encourage people not to rush into relationships. Because you then come out of that healing stage and you get into your single stage and you think, the world is literally my oyster. That doesn't have to take you overseas. It could just take you in a different part of the country that you're currently living in. And you can, like, discover different things, discover new. And it has been massively eye-opening for me. And I think that's why when I always say to people, I bumped into an old friend the other day and I was like, yeah, I've been single for 4 years, but for 2 of those years, I was very unwell. And so I only feel like I've really been single for 2 years. And that is really no time at all when I was, like, fighting for my life financially because I lost my job. And so I am here and I am enjoying it. And I think a lot more people need to be reminded of that. And I think further on that point, and like I said again at the start of this podcast episode, you have to learn how to stop auditing your life. Now, I will say that I think I make quite good decisions, sometimes questionable decisions. And I sometimes make a purchase and I think, was that really wise? Should I have been supervised for that? Do I have to justify this? And the answer is most of the time, yes. Probably, for example, looking at flights to Dubai. Like, I'm like, should I be doing this? Should I be going to Dubai? Is that really wise? It's somewhere I wanted to go. I've seen that people are flying back out there at the minute. But yeah, sometimes I make decisions when I think that was batshit crazy and I need to be supervised. But getting out of the habit of auditing your life and justifying everything that you do because you're worried about people's reactions and you back up all the time, I'm never going to get this time again. You find yourself constantly explaining yourself because in a relationship, you did have to justify things. Well, I did anyway. If I wanted to do something, I had to justify it. If I wanted to, if I didn't want to do something, I had to justify it because your decisions affect somebody else's life as well. If I wanted to take off for 6 months and go traveling around Bali, I would have to my partner, I want to take off for 6 months and go traveling around Bali. And they probably would have come back with, hold on a second, you're in a relationship, why are you doing that? Or like, I want to make this big purchase because this is what I want in my life. And then you kind of get into the conversation that's like, hold on, a house to pay for, or a wedding to pay for, or something along those lines. Like, we want to have children, we've got those to pay for. Those factor into your life massively, that you find yourself that when you come out of a relationship, and I did this with my parents a lot, I found myself justifying everything that I was doing. So like, for example, and this is just something silly and I'm looking at it now, I need to get my carpet. I need to get my carpet done. I need to get that done. Like, it has no underlay in it whatsoever. It's covered in paint from where I've decorated, but there's a lot of things that need to happen before I get that carpet done, but I need to get that carpet done. Am I going to spend the money that I should be spending on that carpet on carpet? No. I'm going to be spending it elsewhere. And I sometimes feel myself saying to my parents, like, when they come round and they're like, oh, you're going to get the carpet done. And I'm like, I will, but I need to do X, Y, and Z. No, is the answer. I'm just not. I'm not doing it. And you find yourself trying to justify why you're making certain decisions. And I say a lot, like, I'm not going to be able to get this time back. I've actually stopped saying that as well, because that, again, is justifying your actions to people that you do not need to justify your life to. These people have no control over your life. You are an adult and you can make these decisions. And I'm not saying be reckless and sell your house, but that has also crossed my mind in the last year. Like, I love my house and I know how much I go on about loving my house and not selling it, but sometimes the thoughts creep in and I end up messaging my sister like, I want to sell my house and like fully move abroad. And she's like, don't sell your house. And I'm like, yeah, I know, don't sell my house, but they're the thoughts that are going through my head. And if I wanted to sell my house and move fully abroad, I could. No one's stopping me. People can advise me against it, but it is my life. And I have nobody around me saying like, you can't do that because I exist. If somebody comes in, I'm going to be like, and I think you could argue that you can be at a single stage of your life where bringing somebody in scares you because you will have to make decisions with somebody else. And I kind of go back to people that say that to me and I'll say, I will know when I want to get into a full-blown relationship because that won't scare me. At the minute, it doesn't scare me. It's just something that I don't want to do. I don't want to compromise my life at the moment, hence the reason why I'm still not in a relationship. But like, when people say, oh, one day you're going to have to, I like it's a negative thing. No, one day I want to. One day I want to share all these decisions and I want somebody to be like, why are you selling your house? You can't, we need somewhere to live. But at the minute, I don't have to do that. And I think you live like you're still in a relationship. and you audit your decisions all the time, it's no one else's business. I think being single offers you such a rare opportunity to be like, hold on a second, this is a season of my life where only I get to make the decisions. One vote. Should I do this? Yes. That's your board meeting. It's just you and yourself. And if you make the decision and click go on a decision, that's your decision. And these clicking go on these decisions can dramatically alter your life and bring so much more into your life because you've been brave enough to be like, I'm going to do this and no one's going to tell me no. And I think a good question to ask yourself at the moment, if you're listening to this, is what choice would I make if no explanation was required? What choices would I be making? Would you be pressing go on big fat decisions? Would you be booking flights? Would you be selling your house? Would you be moving to a place where you thought, do you know what? I've always wanted to live there, so I'm just going to rent there for a bit. Would you be joining a new gym? Would you be taking up a new hobby? Would you be eating different? Would you try experimenting with going vegetarian, or just a decision that you think, if I do that, then people are going to judge. I'm going to have to justify it. Don't. No, you don't. This is you and your life. And it's so funny because when I speak to people, they're like, Lou, I am so aware that I'm living for other people. And I would say that I was living for me, and I'm not. I want you to think about these things. And they might seem simple things that, yeah, you probably could have Googled this and got this offline. I want to be in your ear asking you these questions so you are questioning yourself. And so when people say, how are you enjoying being single? You can be like, because this is a chapter of my life that nobody else gets a vote in. It's just me. How exciting, I think this next one is difficult, but not something that you can't do. And I talk about it a lot, and I talk about it a lot more on my Patreon, because I talk about having to share so much of your life with somebody, especially when you are in like the 10s, 15, 20 years of relationships. You share an entire life, and your favourite things are probably because it's their favourite things. And I talk really openly about having a favourite place and having Nuki as a favourite place, and not returning and not being able to go down there, because it was a place that me and my ex found together. And it was a place that we used to say was our favourite place, and it was our place, and it was our escape. And we used to have such hectic lives that being at the coast enabled us to live the life that we would love to live. And we would have loved to have lived by the beach and brought up children on the beach. We would have loved all of that. That was our plan. And having to let go of Nuki was really, really hard. And I talk about it on my Patreon, and I talk about how in the last year I've come round to being able to go back down there. I haven't made that journey yet. It's something that I don't know whether I want to do on my own or with somebody else, but I haven't got back down there. But it doesn't scare me as much as it used to. And if you would have spoken to me 2 years ago, I would have point blank told you that I am never going back down there. And there was lots that went into the reason why I didn't want to go back down there. But it made me realise that a lot of my favourite things were inherited from my relationship. My favourite places, my favourite walks, my favourite food, like my favourite places to go on holiday. A lot of this, even like down to like my favourite ways to spend my weekends, was inherited from my relationship. And I think creating new experiences is so daunting, because you think, and the reason why it is, and I think creating new experiences is, one, so daunting, and two, really frustrating, because I had over 10 years of memories in a place that I would say was one of my favourite places in the UK. And I know when I go back down there, I am going to just remind myself as to why I love it down there. I follow a girl actually who on Instagram who's recently moved to Nuki, and I look at her content and I think, especially in a heat wave, I look at her content and I just think, oh my God, you are so lucky. You are so lucky to live down there. I don't look at her content and think, oh my God, that is too triggering. I think, my God, she's so lucky that she gets to live down there. Obviously in a heat wave, I know a lot of the UK weather doesn't actually end up being like this, but like her photos and stuff, and I just think, oh my God, that is why I loved that place. Like, it's just, yeah, one of my favourite places ever. And I felt like, and the frustrating part was like, I felt that like that was taken away from me and that I wasn't able to go back down there. My ex had taken his new partner down there, and it just all seemed a lot, and it seemed like my memories were being replaced with theirs. And like I said, I go into all of this on my Patreon, but it was really, really difficult. And I think then I felt like what I was trying to do was create new memories and create new places, but it felt really forced because I was forced out of a place. And I know people would say like, you can go down there, you're allowed to do that, they're allowed to go down there. Yeah, I get all of that, but I genuinely felt like I was forced out of that place because it brought back so many memories, which were then bringing back so many painful memories, because it was like, we used to do this and now I'm not doing it because he's left. But when you're in it, you don't realize how healing it is to build a life that isn't inherited from your relationship. Like, even down to the point where I didn't even want to leave the street that I lived on. I was bargaining on a house coming up for sale down the street from where I lived because I didn't want to move away from where I lived, because I absolutely loved it. I loved the location, I loved the house. The house was slightly smaller that I wanted to come up for sale. I was devastated when it came up for sale and it was too expensive. And now when I look back, I think, my God, I am so glad I don't live down the street from the house that I lived in with my ex. Could you imagine? I absolutely living where I live because no one knows I live here, because it is so out the way. It's so tucked away, it's so private. And even stuff like sentimental things and things that you owned together, it's not a case of throwing them out, but just rebuilding something that you don't have to look at things and think, I only do that because I did it with my ex. And getting out your comfort zone. And this is where the healing part comes in, because getting out your comfort zone, visiting places that you wouldn't have ordinarily visited, doing it on your own, and finding places where you think, this is actually amazing. And I really love it. I really love it here. I've fallen in love with a place that is outside of the UK, and that is my Nuki. I feel like that's probably why I don't feel like a massive draw to go back down to Nuki. I know that I would be able to, but I don't feel like it's like absolutely, I need to do it. I need to do it for the healing. I need to do it for that. I don't feel like that. I feel like a opportunity will come up or a trip will be suggested and I'll just go, and it won't even cross my mind that I'm there and that place is what it used to be. But I think because I've found a different place and I have built a life where it's an important place to me, and it's a place where I actually want to live. I never really wanted to live in Nuki because it was so far away, and you can't obviously guarantee the weather. And I know that and I have actually found a place that I actually want to live. I just always go back to the person that I was when I was going through my breakup, and I think, she would really, really not believe me if I walked into the kitchen and she was crying on the kitchen floor and I put my arm around her and I said, look, I am you, but 2 years later, trust me, you are going to fall in love with the place and you're actually going to consider moving there. And it's not in the UK. I would go, whatever. Yeah, right. I just want to go back down to Nuki. And you have to go through those thought processes. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm still really struggling with letting go of memories, you have to go through that. And it is unfair. And I'm not saying it isn't. But I will sit here and I will encourage you that it does get easier and you do come out the other side and you do find other places and find happiness in other things. The next thing I want to talk to you about, which is pretty much something that I not struggled with, but like I realised how much I was doing it, is that breakups bring so much intense emotion into your days that when you come out of the grieving stage and actually start putting one foot in front of the other and rebuilding your life, your days feel really boring. And I'm going to extend that into the fact that when you look back being in a relationship, like getting a text from somebody that you like either are in love with or you fancy and you're really attracted to, is exciting. And you think, oh, this has made my day really exciting, like really, really exciting. And on the flip side, when you're going through a breakup, you are overwhelmed with so much emotion every single day that when that emotion kind of subsides and it gets less and less and less as you go through healing, the single becomes louder and louder and louder because your days feel really boring. Then you're like, okay, well, I've got no one to text and no one's having an argument with me, and I'm sad because I'm not texting someone, but I'm also grateful that I'm not in an argument with somebody. And then when you sit and the peace and you're like, single's boring. Like, it is boring. It's not. You have just been so used to so much emotional intensity for the last 10 years of your life when you've been in a relationship, with all the love and, like I said, the excitement and being able to text somebody and getting excited seeing their name coming up on their phone, to a period of like such intense emotions with being in a stage of grieving and hurt and pain and, like I said, the arguments, the amount of emotion that comes into your life when you are going through a breakup, to coming out of that and not having either of those two things and feeling like you've got like an empty life. And I feel like people mistake peace for emptiness, and then you resent being single. And what you're not doing is thinking, holy shit, I survived the most horrendous breakup, and I also know how exciting it is to be in a relationship. And those two things should make your single life feel like peace, because you can look and think, yes, I know what it's like to be in a relationship. I know how exciting it is to be in a relationship. I can't wait to fancy somebody again, which is kind of like the stage that I went through. And also you can be so grateful that you don't have to navigate such intense emotions every single day, because you are finally coming out the other side of your breakup. And I think when you go through a breakup and when you've been in a relationship, it's so easy to think that like you're only having a meaningful day if you feel a certain way. And I feel like people think their day must have been meaningful if they had like an intense sort of emotional day. Sometimes I go through days and I think, number one, I haven't spoken to anyone today. And number two, it's just been so calm because like I don't have to deal with anything. I'm not dealing with anything. And like, you know, I'm not having the excitement of like seeing a text, but I'm also not crying my eyes out at 7:00 in the morning because I've seen a text or been sent some information. Like, this is peace. This is calm. And people say it's boring and empty. And I feel like people should stop measuring their days when they're single on how they feel. And that's wild coming from somebody who preaches about feeling your emotions, but on the days where single feels boring, instead of thinking, how do I feel today? I'm so bored, like this is boring, I wish I had someone to fancy or someone to text. How about thinking like, how much freedom did I have today? Did I utilize that freedom? Did I go and do what I wanted to do? Or did I just sit in a state of like, I don't want to be single, this is really boring, and I would much rather be in a relationship? I think sitting in that sort of space. Because when you start thinking like, how much freedom did I have? It completely changes your mindset around being single, because you are becoming grateful for the peace that you have in your life, because you are thinking, yes, those emotions are great when you're in a relationship. They're not when you're out of a relationship, and thank God you're not dealing with them anymore. It makes you become more grateful. And obviously I talk about doing my gratitudes every day. I write down 10 things that I'm grateful for to remind myself just how much stuff I have in my life to be grateful for. If you don't want to do that, just flipping a question of like, how much freedom did I have today? You start thinking, oh my God, actually, yeah, I just did that. And I'm so grateful that I've got the opportunity to do that, because if I wasn't single, if I was in a relationship, I would not have this much freedom. And I think flipping these questions is so important. And I know sometimes it is really hard because you are sitting there thinking, there is nothing going on in my life. But when you think like that, I want you to be able to flip it and think, okay, yeah, there's nothing going on in my life, but because I'm at peace. And also I have an immense amount of freedom in my life because I'm single. And you could argue that that is terrifying, because I do. And sometimes the amount of freedom scares me a little bit. Like I said, I'm quite impulsive, and some of the decisions that I make can be quite impulsive, and it's the freedom that allows me to make those impulsive decisions. And I feel like my friends and my family laugh at me when I make jokes like that, because they are like, we actually don't know what you're going to do next sometimes. I'm like, I know. The next thing I want to talk about is, no one really talks about how you lose somebody that is like you're on your team when you go through a breakup. You have to build a life where you are your cheerleader, because I remember coming back from like my first ever 8K run, and my ex being like, oh my God, we have to document this, I'm going to take a picture. And he took a picture of me, and I'm stood in the kitchen. I am blowing and I am knackered. And I uploaded it onto my Instagram, like, so proud of myself. This is my first 8K run. And of course, like I said his name, but I was like, my ex has got to take a photo because we've got to document this, because we're a team and we championed each other. And I remember, like I say a lot in the early days of my podcast episodes, that we used to celebrate absolutely everything. That was just who we were. We would have drinks if he won a job, or we'd have drinks if I ran a 10K, or we'd just have celebratory drinks and dinners for everything. We celebrated everything. And I don't know whether that was part of like his upbringing or part of mine, because we are big on Christmas, New Year, birthdays, Easter, everything. We celebrate everything. But I think that he did as well. So I don't know whose life it came from. Maybe it was a bit of both, but we literally celebrated everything. And when you go through a breakup, you haven't got somebody to text to say, guess what I've done today? Or I've just done this. And God love my family. I love my family. I love them all. But it's a different feeling when you achieve something, because you're achieving it for you both. Yes, you're doing it for you, but you're also doing it because you want to make somebody proud, or you want to be able to better out the future that you're building with somebody. And all these things that you do are stemmed around being in a relationship. And when that goes, it's really, really hard to not have somebody by your side saying, you smashed that, well done, I'm really proud of you. You have to become that person. And I kind of got used to doing this by saying it out loud in the shower. My shower is where I have a lot of chats with myself. But I used to say, like, if I'd come back from something, I used to say, God, I'm so proud of you, Lou. And it feels weird, because you're like, oh, God, I really wish that I could just text somebody, like, oh, if you're in the pits, if you break up, I really wish I could text my ex and say, hey, guess what I've just done? And there were things that happened in my breakup, like, I've thought he would wish me good luck on the morning of my half marathon, and then he said that he didn't know what time it started. Most races started in the morning, so you thought he would just wake up and say, like, good luck. This was only about 2 months or 3 months after he left me. I thought I would wake up to a good luck message. And when things like that happened and they didn't come through and I didn't get a good luck message, I was reminded that it was just me and that I had to wish myself good luck. And yes, I had my family, but again, like I said, it's different when that's coming from somebody that you're in a relationship with. It's just a different kind of good luck, and it's a different kind of like, I'm proud of you message. And the more stuff I did, like running races and getting over the finish line of a marathon and expanding my social media, putting myself out there, the more I said to myself every single time I did something like, I'm really proud of you, out loud, the less I found like I needed to have somebody else witness me do stuff. I do stuff now and I sit and I look at stuff online and I look at what I've created and built, and nobody else sees that. It's just me. And I don't feel the need to tell people what I'm achieving sometimes, because I have got to a point now where my validation and me saying that I'm proud of myself is more than enough. And when you become fully capable of experiencing life without a witness, experiencing life without somebody saying, congratulations, you smashed that, well done, it is a different level of freedom, because you don't dread anything. I dreaded getting around my half marathon without my ex being at the finish line, to the point where I even begged him to come and said, I can't do this without you, and I want to get round, I want you to be at the finish line. And I remember one of my friends being like, you categorically do not need him there, and me being like, no, I do. And when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, thank God he wasn't at that finish line. That was a very big, poignant part of my breakup, was getting over the finish line of that half marathon, and thank God he wasn't there. I even put my gloves on at the end of the race so I could show my children this was my first half marathon, so you couldn't see my engagement ring, because I was not in a place mentally to be able to take that ring off. I ran that half marathon with my engagement ring on my finger, but for the photos that I will cherish for the rest of my life, and like I said, show my children, I covered it up. I put my gloves back on and I made sure. And I remember my sister, it was like a nod to me. I said, I need to put my gloves back on, and she knew exactly why. And now I've gone on to get over the finish line of numerous races, and on my own, I've turned up to races by myself and got over the finish line and been so proud of myself. Been in the car like, you smashed that. Like, you become your own cheerleader, and when you remove the need to have a witness to everything that you're doing, you feel another phase of like freedom in being single. And finally, I want to talk to you about two final things. The first one being that being single gives you complete ownership over your time. Complete ownership. And that is what I think people in relationships miss. The most annoying statement ever, you're so lucky that you're single. And you think, am I? Do I feel lucky? You don't when you are first initially single, and people don't ask how long you've been single. So like when I was single for like 6 months, people are like, oh my God, you're so lucky. And I think, no, I'm fighting for my actual life. I'm not lucky. There is nothing lucky about this. Like, I can barely get up in the morning. I can't breathe. Please tell me where the lucky part is coming into this, because I don't feel lucky at all. And I think what a lot of people do, and this is not me generalising everybody in a relationship, but when people get out of a relationship, they crave a relationship so badly that they jump into another relationship. And then when they're in that relationship, they realise that they hadn't actually utilised their single time enough to know what it is like to experience having complete ownership over everything that you do. And I think that's where the you're so lucky comes from, when sometimes when people talk to you, because it's like, oh my God, you can do whatever you want, when you want, with whoever you want. And yeah, I think that people think that like being single means that you've got a complete unlimited options in your life. And I think you could argue that, yeah, you do, but I think that one of the most important things people forget is that being single means that you have total ownership of what you do. It's funny because when you talk to people and they're so negative about being single, you think, hold on a second, you've got complete ownership over your life, what your future looks like, where you live, where your attention go, where you put your energy, who you spend time with, who you make friends with, like the pace of your life. And yet people are making it so negative, and you have complete ownership over that. Like, it doesn't mean that you can just go off and sleep with absolutely everybody that you want to sleep with. I mean, you can do that, but I think people make single being about that. It's not. It's so much deeper than that. You get to slow down your life if you want to slow it down. I didn't realise how much my life was snowballing when I was in a relationship. And it was like we were married, talking about children, you know, settling down, settling in the town that we lived in. I hadn't realised just how quickly it all kind of snowballs. And when you're out of it, you realise how quickly it snowballs. But when you're in it, you think, oh, it's the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I've been able to completely slow down my life and change the pace of my life and change my goals and become more confident with my life looking the way that it looks. And that's because I've had complete ownership over my time. And like I said, when people say, oh, you're single, you can go out and do whatever you want. Yeah, you can. But actually drilling down and actually getting deeper into what that actually means. And I think people forget that you do have complete ownership over your life. And so much surface level stuff is spoken about. And people say, oh, you can just jump on a flight and go over there. Yeah, you can. You can also reassess everybody that you have in your life and think about what the types of people you want to bring into your life and the types of people that you want to distance yourself from for your future. And single people don't think about this, because when they have a conversation with somebody in a relationship, all they talk about is the freedom that you have is to meet somebody new and sleep around. They're the two main things that people talk to you about when being single, not the fact that you actually get to drill down and change things in your life that you had never really thought about. And when I look and think about my life, it has changed massively. I've distanced myself from people that I don't think really bring anything positive into my life. I have brought people into my life whose energy and timeline of their lives match mine completely. I have, like I said, slowed down the pace of my life completely. Age does not scare me at all. I have focused on how I want my future to be, to the point where every single decision that I make most days are contributing to my future. And I think when people jump from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, you miss out on that. And you miss out on that time because you don't want to be single. So you're frantically looking for somebody. And what you don't realise is that you are missing out on a huge opportunity to be able to literally build the life of your dreams. And people think that that's just like you can live your dream life. No, you can actually live your dream life. You know, you can actually build the dream life that you've always dreamt of having. And it is possible. And the final thing I wanted to talk to you about is the kind of going back to what I was saying about needing a witness is, and I get asked to talk about this a lot, and it is understanding how becoming a private person is so rewarding. And I will just touch on this very briefly, that you do not need to tell people what you're doing with your life just because you're single. I don't know what it is. I think that people think that they have a right to ask you what you're doing with your life, who you're spending time with, who you're seeing, because you are single. People become incredibly nosy when you're single. And I think the best thing that I have done is learn, and it's taken me a while, how to become a private person and not need validation, a witness, or anything like that. Any decision I make in my life, being able to say to somebody, actually, do you know what? I'm not going to tell you. Being able to live a life, one, offline, is huge in this current day and age. Not posting on social media, and so people don't know what's going on in your life, will bring you the most amount of peace, and that is a hill that I am willing to die on, and a hill that took me a long time to climb. Don't get me wrong, I loved a social media post, and I post on this account all the time, but I very, very, very rarely share details of my life online now. And two, nobody should just presume they have access over your life just because you are single. I think it's one of those things that used to really get under my skin, and I felt like people were asking such personal questions that I felt like I needed to answer. You do not have to answer to anybody. Your relationship status does not define you as a person, and you do not have to explain anything that you are doing to anybody just because you are single. It's wild to me that what the things that people ask you just because you're single, like who you're spending time with, who you're sleeping with, why you went somewhere, if you found somebody new, where you've been, what you've been doing. These are all the questions that people don't ask you when you're in a relationship. When you're in a relationship, you get, are you okay? Mum and dad all right? When you're single, people ask you such personal questions and you think, hold on a second. Just because I'm single doesn't give you the right to ask me that. I think living privately and being able to find peace in living privately is so, so important. And it will completely change your whole single experience. Trust me. Trust me on that. Like I said, it's taken me a while to be able to learn how to do it and learn that like the people outside your core friendship group and family don't need to know what's going on in your life. It took me a long time, but I cannot tell you or express to you how much peace that has brought into my life completely. I hear a lot of, have you seen what she's posted on social media? Or have you seen what he's posted on social media? And I think that there is a lot of pressure. I've definitely felt a lot of pressure to post to prove that I was okay, or like prove that I was living my life and prove that I was having the best time. And I think one of the best things that happened to me was that I met my best friend who was 10 years younger than me. And for some reason, people don't post online like they used to. And the millennials don't post online like they used to. And I would do something and then I'd be like, oh yeah, but if it goes on social media, and she would be like, who's putting it on social media? Because I'm not and you're not. So who's going to see? And she started me thinking into like changing how I show up online and what I want people to see. And that's not me saying that people that post on, that you shouldn't post online. Like, you know, I went through a stage of like 2 years of posting constantly on my Instagram stories and people knowing exactly where I was and my account was open and all the rest of it. You do feel like you have a point to prove. I'm not saying that everybody that shows up online has a point to prove, of course not. But I do think that the pressure is there to prove a point that you are fine. And you feel that pressure, and at the end of the day, the amount of peace that comes into your life when you do not have to be showing up 24/7 online, doing loads of stuff to prove to people that you're healing. Healing can happen in different ways, and I feel like me being more private than I have ever been is a big fat nod to me actually healing from a life that I used to live where I used to post 24/7 to a completely new chapter of my life. There's very, very little things in my life now that actually look like my old life. And I know that when I go into a relationship, my relationship is also going to look completely different to the relationship that I had with my ex-partner. And that's taken me time, and it will take time. But being single is hard, but you don't have to survive it. Like, it's not a case of surviving being single. You can actually live a very enriching life being single. You don't have to fear it. It's everybody around you a lot of the time as well, like people saying that you should fear being single, and online you should, you know, being single is a bad thing. I want to look back in 10 years time and be able to think, God, my single chapter shaped every part of the life that I live now. I can't wait for that day. Like, I get excited about it, like thinking about the stuff that I'm building now, business wise obviously, but also like within myself and what I'm learning from relationships, that when I look back I think, thank God I did all of that healing and all that work around finding peace and joy in being single, and didn't just try and escape it. I hope that episode's helped. I've really enjoyed talking about being single. I really enjoy talking on being single in general. If you want more episodes, like I always say, guys, come join me over on my Patreon. If you want to be a part of the emails, then like I said, you can sign up through the links in my bio. If not, guys, I will speak to you next week. Have a glorious weekend. Look after yourself. Bye.